Hello, everyone. Welcome back to It's a Lot, Let's Talk. I'm Kylie.
I'm JP.
So, in last week's episode, we talked about hallway caregiving and the long-term care wait lists, sort of what we see every day when families are navigating a system or holding the system together with so much confusion and overwhelm and stress going on. And many people assume that aging happens in hospitals or long-term care homes, but most is actually always happening inside someone's home. There's lots that you don't see on the inside. So today we sort of want to flip the script and ask the question of if we could design the ideal aging at home system from scratch, what would that look like? And I'm going to be looking at it from the perspective of someone who's worked inside of a home care agency and sort of imagine a care coordination center that stabilizes care before crisis. And then I,
I'm going to look at it from the lens of kind of workforce development, employer perspective, human resource perspective, all of that type of thing. And I think what's interesting about this exercise is that we know provincially, governmentally, in Ontario at least, aging at home is the goal. And why is it the goal? It just makes economic sense from a cost savings perspective. Our hospitals are overburdened, our long-term care facilities are overrun. There's only so many retirement homes that are affordable, et cetera, et cetera. So, we're going to walk through this exercise about thinking and looking at the stars and saying, hey, if we were to build it, not would they come, would it be effective and allow and facilitate the ability for families and seniors to age at home, stay at home. And so I'm excited about this conversation and this exploration of this topic.
Me too, me too. I'm a huge advocate for aging in place for probably different reasons than you are. Um,
Mhm.
it's overall just change is hard as you age. Obviously, we know that. And so if you're an older adult and you're moving from home to a facility, that adjustment can be very hard and sometimes detrimental to your aging process. So, a huge advocate for aging in place. So, very excited to have this conversation with you today and also see your perspective from the workforce side as well.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about this is, I think in my own perspective, from my own perspective, as I grow older, would I want to join a community of elders, whether it be, in a retirement home, whatever it may be, or do I want to stay in my home, my own home? And I think the answer is, yeah, I like my home. I like my freedom, my flexibility, my things to do things. But where it gets tricky is what happens health wise. What in that case, do I need, support in a different way that I can get at home? So I guess from the perspective we're going to be looking at, we're making some assumptions that, mentally we're still able to, be on our own or with our partners. I said partners, I meant partner. Partner, and physically, are we able to? So there's some obviously realities that we have to kind of look at, but
Mhm.
um, I think in a perfect world, the majority of us would probably want to age in place, where we're at and could kind of continue that. But that may not always be the possibility. But if it were physically and mentally, what would that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. My question to you would be what do you think right off the bat what that would look like on the employer side for aging in place as maybe for the unpaid caregivers or I don't know, just sort of your perspective on that.
Yeah, well, and the only reason we're talking about employers it's individuals are having to work longer in their lives,
Yeah.
more so than ever before because of economic realities, right? It's not uncommon to work in your late 70s. Or it's not uncommon now with the demographics that an employee has a parent who is aging and needs to be taken care of. So there is a caregiving reality that an employer and the workforce has to recognize. It's just the reality that exists. And as the population ages, that becomes a major factor in determining whether or not, what sort of engagement you're going to get from your employee. So we can never run away from the employer saying, hey, we could put our heads in the sand and not recognize that. So that's absolutely critical. Um, I see, employers, creating a culture or an environment where caregivers can freely say, hey, Mr. Employer or Mrs. Employer, I have somebody that I'm taking care of, and it does take a proportion of my time. And I just want you to know that. And it's not that I'm trying to skirt my responsibilities. It's just the reality that I'm currently, experiencing. And in many cases, it may be, yeah, on my parents' side, I'm also a caregiver, but also on my children's side, I'm a caregiver. It might be on my neighbor's side, but just the reality that caregiving is just part of society, and organizations need to realize that. So, accepting that, making it a safe place for employees to express that, is an important kind of facet to that. So organizations really have to rethink their relationship with their employees. It's just not, I hire you, you produce an output. It's I hire you, how can I support you so that you're more likely to produce the output that I'm wanting you to produce. Um, also, the whole notion of metrics, what is measured is deemed important. So tracking caregiving and determining and making sure that, caregiving is a workforce metric. Again, the more we measure or something that we do measure, it becomes more important. We pay more attention to it, and it's really important. For other aspects from a workforce perspective or an employer perspective is making sure that leadership or managers are trained on the fact that, yeah, the likelihood of your employee being a caregiver at either end of the age spectrum is obviously a big reality and a likelihood. So how do we make sure that they're prepared to deal with somebody who's balancing caregiving with their work life? And recognizing that just because somebody is a caregiver, they shouldn't be punished because of it. It should be accepted and kind of baked into what's going on, and they should be supported and that type of thing. So, leadership development is really key in making that a topic of it as well. One of
Hmm.
the biggest things that we know right now is the whole RTO thing, the return to office kind of mandates.
Yeah.
Making sure, if they're implementing this policy that everybody has to come to the office, it should be done for the right reasons, not just because we have leases and we gotta make sure that we're capitalizing on what we're spending, but because it just makes sense for the type of work that they're doing, the type of culture they're trying to build, and so forth. But at the very least, have a hybrid approach to that, and that's really key. Being flexible is an important part of that as well. So yeah, there's a bunch of things that employers can do. Um, within the organization, within the community, they can start thinking about how do I develop partnerships with care coordination services or navigation
Hmm.
services, making that connection on behalf of the employee. Let's face it, the employer may not be an expert in care coordination, but there are care coordinator experts out there that can assist and help with that. Is it a cost? Of course it is, but it's looking at an ROI perspective and saying, hey, if I invest X number of dollars into this mechanism to support my workforce, what sort of return am I going to get? Well, you might get more engagement, you might minimize presenteeism, you increase commitment, which is really key. That all leads to a greater level of output and engagement on the employee side. So money out, money in, if it balances out, is obviously worth it. When you're talking about your workforce, you're talking about human capital. That's really really key. Uh,
Hmm.
so yeah, I could go on and on about it, but the employer plays a pivotal role in our life,
Yeah,
and it has to be factored in.
absolutely. I mean, I guess we'll pivot and talk about the family experience now and sort of what that would look like. But I want to take a step back and think about what's actually in place right now for the ideal aging at home family. It's not. it's not super clear. It's different for everyone, and it's tough to manage. There's so much going on, and every individual is different, and every individual will age differently. So, what that can look like is families being responsible for scheduling appointments or coordinating whatever that is, whether it's for the doctor or chiropodist or speech therapy, whatever it is, everybody's different. Everybody has so many things going on. Families are also monitoring medication or transportation and having to worry about, oh, I have to get mom here for this time because maybe she's meeting her friend, or maybe again she has an appointment. Um, but also on top of that, I think a huge worry or concern for families is safety monitoring. So for those family members who can't be with mom or dad 24/7, what's happening when they're not around? And oftentimes families will maybe put in a camera or call multiple times, and that's not always the best case scenario for these older adults who are trying to age with independence and dignity and autonomy. Like that's hard. You're aware that there's a camera in your home, or your daughter's gonna call at this time or every 10 minutes after that just to make sure you're okay. That's a lot of stress on both parties, on the children and also on the parent, the older adult. So there's so many things that are being monitored by families right now. And that's before we even start talking about the home care. When you start talking about home care, then families now are putting in place um, they have to try and navigate a system that they probably have no idea how to even approach. The hardest part is making those calls and deciding which home care agency is the best for you if this is the route that you're going to go down. Um, Finding a caregiver who or an agency that can provide caregivers with continuity of care. So are you getting the same caregiver who knows mom and dad's routine well, who is able to walk in and mom and dad recognize them and know what to expect and feel comfortable and safe with them? That's huge because oftentimes if an agency is sending a caregiver who is new or like say the standard caregiver is sick or away or can't come that day because caregivers have lives too, as we've previously discussed. Um, Having somebody who's seamlessly able to step in, a practitioner or a caregiver who's seamlessly able to step in, is the agency able to provide that? What do those contracts look like? What are you signing up for when you're signing a contract for your parents to receive home care? Read the fine print for sure. Like there's minimums, there's cancellation fees, and that's hard because like we've discussed before, home care is so unpredictable that when you're locked into these contracts, it can also add an extra layer of stress.
Yeah.
There's so many different I don't want to say issues because standard home care agencies can provide a lot for aging in home. They really do. It's the ideal if you have the time to set up the care, if you're not responding in time of crisis, if you have the tools or the resources in front of you where you can pick the best home care agency and you have the time to set it up and go through the process and mom and dad feel comfortable. Definitely ideal. Also, let's talk about if you can afford it, but that's a whole other topic. Um, but so many avenues that you could go down and whether it's the right fit for you. And if you do land on home care now, I want to flip and talk about what that should like really look like. What's the ideal? And I think that it should first of all start with no minimums because home care is so unpredictable. A lenient cancellation fee because what happens if there's an emergency, something happens, and then honestly, more affordable. We've spoken
Mm.
about how expensive long-term care facilities can be, but oftentimes people explore long-term care facilities or retirement, nursing, whatever it may be, because sometimes it does turn out to be cheaper than home care. If you need around-the-clock care, it's assumed that a facility is where you need to be for around-the-clock care. But there's also the option of having around-the-clock care at home, getting a home care agency to come in, or getting a care activation infrastructure to come in And maybe it's overnight care. That's huge. Just having someone sit and be there in case mom and dad need to get up to use the washroom, or um, maybe they need a drink of water in the night and they can't reach their glass, whatever it may be, just safety monitoring, even. But also, then someone else coming in during the day and helping them with their standard routines of getting up in the morning and um, companionship between morning and lunch, then making lunch, helping with meal prep, and promoting this independence and autonomy before they hit that level of no longer being able to, maybe, or not no longer being able to, but starting to have a little bit less independence, being more reliant on those around, to help with their daily activity, whatever they're doing in their days. Everybody's different, but I think the ideal situation, or I guess another ideal situation, would be families having one place to call. Like you mentioned previously, JP is having care coordinators and employees, or sorry, employers providing those or resources to care coordinators. So having one place to call, having access to a care coordinator is so ideal because that care coordinator can help with managing appointments, um, assisting in arranging for transportation so the children or the unpaid caregivers don't have to change around their whole schedule just to drive mom to meet her friend for coffee. Um, and that also comes with navigating the healthcare system in itself. So helping with assisting, talking to doctors. Not everybody understands, or to the length that a care coordinator could understand, um, some of these doctor's appointments that can be super overwhelming. So having a care coordinator there to support the caregiver, the unpaid caregiver, but also support the older adult can be helpful. And then also someone who can help interpret these changes as mom and dad age. What's normal? What's not normal? Or sorry, I'll say normal because,
Mm.
but what can you look out for, and what is a sign that maybe there should be some concern and you need to speak with maybe your family doctor or whatever it may be. So having a care coordinator would be super helpful for everyone. It takes some of the load off of the family, which obviously it doesn't take all the load off because there's still going to be that stress, but it can definitely be beneficial. And then making those care coordinators more affordable. So if employers could assist in resources or providing access to a coordinator within their organization, that would be huge. That would be ideal.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah, and you bring up a lot of good points, and this is a huge topic when you're trying to look into the future and what would be the ideal kind of system that you would have in place. And I think what's interesting, and you kind of alluded to this out, home care and the services surrounding that and coordination, I guess, being at the top, hasn't really changed in the last 50 years. It's been the same kind of setup, right? Now, as time has gone on, technology's been introduced. There's different ways. So, it's looking at it from a different perspective and what sort of resources exist today that didn't exist 50 years ago. Well, technology is one of those things. So, how can we leverage technology to kind of support this process? And what you described, I'm not suggesting we take away that human element, but tech plays definitely a role in building the perfect system. So looking at that elements, on an employer side, expecting employees, to be in the office all the time is not really caregiver friendly, especially in light of the fact that there's a lot of caregivers. But, finding a hybrid between that. And I think in the home, finding a hybrid between, human contact, in-person contact with technology is the foreseeable future, right? If not now, it's already happening in some instances. There's a lot of tech companies out there that provide monitoring services, for example, within the home. Nobody has to be there. If the blood pressure goes too high or if there's a fall incident and so forth, somebody's alerted, right? Still needs to be human connected and so forth. So there's a lot of opportunity to kind of do that. And that definitely, I think, would be part of that perfect model of in-home care or aging at home. The other aspect is the whole care coordination piece, right? You
Mhm.
don't know what you don't know, or you're missing out what you don't know, and some of the opportunities to make your life easier and so forth. If you don't know, you don't know, and you can't kind of gain from those benefits. And so, even care coordination as a role, how do we find a hybrid model between somebody who knows the system really well and can help navigate it with technology and assistance? And we know now there's products out there, there's systems out there, there's apps out there that help people navigate. And I will say the two letters AI help kind of input some information and it spits out and can be very accurate over time, and it'll only get more accurate over time as well, because essentially what you're trying to access is information about what's available in the system, which is basically data, and AI kind of serves that really well. So again, I guess marrying tech with human interaction is looks like the future. My question to you is, or from experience working in home care agencies, what would have been or is some of the biggest challenges you're seeing families deal with if you were to kind of classify it and put it into one bucket, that could be solved with the combination of tech support as well as human interaction? Putting you on the spot there.
That's a good question. I think one of the biggest issues that I've experienced, and I don't know if it's really, well, let me think about how it could be um, related to tech or fixed with tech, but one of the biggest issues I have seen is decision fatigue.
Hmm.
So a lot of the time, or sorry, by the time families reach out to an agency, they've already come to this point of acceptance that they need help. But are they ready to take that next step? I'm not sure. That's obviously up to the family. But by the time they make that first call or those few calls to the home care agencies, they're tired. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to navigate. They don't know what's next. They need that guidance from those agencies to sort of push them into that next step, right? And sort of tell them what they need. The family can provide all this information of what's going on in the home, their observations, obviously, and then obviously doctors' recommendations, but they don't know what they need from home care. Because, for example, let's say um, mom is diagnosed with dementia. Doctor says you need home care or facility, you choose home care, around the clock care, but you're calling an agency, you don't know what that means. You have no idea. So you're expecting that agency to sort of push you in the right direction, give you that help. But oftentimes, care coordinators, well, at the agency need to step in and make that push. They don't always have the ability. It's a hard system to navigate in the fact that the families need to be ready and accepting, and the care coordinators need to know when to give that little push and when to sort of step back and let these families make their decisions because they know their families best. So, how tech can help with that is sort of the care coordination. I don't want to say push, but having everything in one place would be super easy for the families if they can go on and they can see um, maybe a calendar of when there's um, appointments for mom and dad, a little reminder of like, hey, they need this today, or their schedules, what to expect. So having everything in one place almost not taking the human aspect out of the care coordinator, but almost putting all of the things you can turn into tech from a care coordinator into technology, and then having access still to that coordinator who can have those emotional conversations with you and be like, hey, this is normal, don't worry. So that can be, I guess, beneficial. What that actually looks like and how easy it is to turn that into
Mhm.
technology is a completely different question. And by no means am I tech
Right.
experienced like that, but I think that also reduces the amount of times that someone needs to reach out to a care coordinator, which can also feel like a burden. If I had to reach out to, say you're a care coordinator, and felt I needed to reach out to you every day, multiple times a day, just to put my feelings at ease, that can also add an extra layer of stress to me. I would feel like a burden, and then I'm also stressed about caring for my parents. So having that access on my phone where I feel I need to talk to a care coordinator, oh, I can just maybe even it's chat with AI and say, are these symptoms normal for my aging parent or whatever it is? Look at the calendar, look at what's going on this week.
Yeah.
Anything like that, easier said than done.
Interesting though, like you first jump to decision fatigue, and that's kind of interesting because you think about the process in my own personal process with my mother, for example. We were always, my sisters and I, always making decisions, right?
Yeah.
Always making decisions. And fortunately, we happen to have my sister in the healthcare system already, so those decisions were a little easier perhaps than somebody that doesn't have it. But I think it's human nature to put off today what we could do tomorrow, or to not want to recognize that a crisis is happening. And so, if I do have to make a decision, I don't want to necessarily have to make that decision right away. Put somebody in an LTC, long-term care home, or, have to get this type of help or this type of help, especially if someone who's proud and so forth. So, you know, in a perfect world, I could see where those decisions, like you said, I have access to either through a care coordinator or a piece of tech that kind of informs me so I can make it along the way. But almost having, like a radar in place where it kind of says, boop, boop, you're approaching, challenging times ahead because, it looks like your parent or whoever you're caring for is moving in this direction. And these are the things that you want to start to think about. You don't have to panic and do it right away, but these
Hmm.
it's what's coming up ahead. And, I think about that from an employer perspective. They're always forecasting, and forecastings are educated guesses on what's going to happen in the future. And that kind of makes sense from, a caregiving perspective. You're forecasting into the future, yet human nature is fighting that because I don't want to think about, the inevitable up ahead. I want to think about the moment and doing it. But ideally, just like a business who's going to last, a family who's going to have a sane kind of journey is going to have to start to forecast. So if the perfect system had an opportunity for families to prepare for the inevitable,
Hmm.
in a structured and processed way, I think that would ease a lot of caregiver burnout, stress, and perhaps even increase not the fact that people are going to age at home, but the way to get to aging at home is not going to be as anxiety ridden and stressful. So preparing for that inevitable crisis or that inevitable event that's going to happen ahead of time would be ideal. And I think that's where a combination of, like you were talking about, a human, care coordinator, the practitioners that we deal with, professionals and so forth, and the tech side can come together to kind of support that journey. So, let me ask you this: if you were to kind of pick the key points for the perfect system, and that was the purpose of this whole conversation, is you know, um, what would that perfect system look like? What are, and again, not to put you on the spots, but what are some of your top elements that would have to be included in order to see that system that achieves what we've been talking about?
In technology or in just in
Just in the
general?
system, yeah.
Hmm. Key elements, definitely care coordination center would be ideal, like we've just discussed. Having everything in one place, easy to access, right at your fingertips. So yeah, I will throw in that technology. Um, Key elements. It's a good question. I want to throw it back at you first while I think of my point. Is there any key elements you would want to include? Because you've dealt with it firsthand.
Yeah. For sure. And I think we need to look at it from a holistic perspective, a societal perspective. One, it's
Yeah.
within the home. Aging at home is in the home, but it also surrounded by the environment in which that home exists. And employers
Right.
are a big part of that, right? So making sure that employers are up to speed and they understand, make the connection between workforce productivity and their ability to support their employees who are caregivers. So, kind of building that into that whole ecosystem, um, recognizing that hospitals and long-term care homes, which are supported by government, at least in Ontario and Canada, um, can get overwhelmed. So there's a reason why aging at home is so important. One, it maintains perhaps the dignity of the individual, but from a pure economic perspective, it is a way more cost effective way than overloading our hospitals and long-term care homes and our health system. And so recognizing that and government developing policy and creating budgets and supporting and encouraging new ways of doing that and making sure that people are able to stay aging at home. Um, so those are kind of perhaps external factors that need to be kind of looked at. I agree with you on the care coordination side, whether it be tech or a combination, human or a combination of the two. I think care coordinators will always be needed because you want that human element, and
Yeah.
that's a big part of it. And just the reality that aging at home is already happening, right? It's been happening. Those that have been fortunate enough with the supports and resources they have and the good health that they're experiencing are aging at home. The challenge, as we know, and that's why we're talking about it, is the system hasn't caught up. So the ideal system kind of puts at the forefront what sort of mechanisms need to be in place, both from a policy, both from a governmental support, both from an employer, both from home infrastructure within the home itself. What needs to be in place in order for aging at home to be truly accomplished and achieved.
Mhm.
So it's a big question and a big thing. I think we're heading in the right direction. I think we have no choice but to head towards
Yeah.
aging at home because of the economic realities of the world, especially here in Canada, if not in North America. So now it's a question of re looking at what already exists out there in terms of the system and maybe finding combination between tech and human touch and bringing it all together.
Hmm. I think that it all starts with education and awareness. And if we're able to provide awareness and education through whether that's through organizations, employers, community, whatever it is, if we're able to provide that before crisis happens, we're giving families the opportunity to make informed decisions for their parents' future or for their future before they have this decision fatigue or this burnout that we're so often seeing for many people. So I think it starts with trying to get people to go against human nature to put things off because if it's not right in front of you, you're not doing it. I think giving the awareness and education or having these conversations, making people feel comfortable to sort of think about the scary, inevitable future of their aging parent or their aging selves is huge. So they can make those informed decisions again before crisis hits, so they can have sort of a stabilization protocol in place and they can know, okay, here's a sign that something's happened. Let's take this step and let's put this in place now. That whatever they have pre-planned, whether that is aging in place at home or whether that is maybe shifting to a facility, long-term care, retirement, or nursing, whatever it looks, whatever the best option is for the older adult, for the individual. So everything starts with awareness and education in my eyes at this time is so ideal. And we don't have these conversations enough. We It's never talked about on the daily. You go into a workplace, you're obviously talking about work. You're not talking about, hey, I'm a really burnt out caregiver. I'm really feeling it today. My work isn't up to par. I know that that's an added layer of stress for me, but I can't stop thinking about my mom at home. Is she safe? Is she, I don't know, able to make her lunch today? Whatever it may be for everyone, it's different, but yeah.
And it's complex, and I don't know if we've done this
Complex.
topic. What's that?
I said so complex.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I don't know if we've done this topic justice, but like you said, it's starting the discussion and thinking about what things. And all I can know, and all I'll say is, it's time to do things differently, to do things creatively, to think innovatively. And it's not just one group, one organization figuring this out. It's a collective whole. And um, when that happens, there's a likelihood that things can be. There is a solution, and there's likelihood that there can be a solution. So
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today on It's a Lot, Let's Talk. JP, if you have anything else to add, if not, we can.
no, no, I'm good. I'm tired.
All
Take it away.
right, well, thank you everybody for tuning in today. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Thanks so much for tuning in to It's a Lot, Let's Talk. Designing a better aging at home system means thinking about how we truly support older adults, caregivers, and the people working on the front lines of care. Aging at home is not simple, and real support takes coordination, understanding, and the right systems in place. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to like us on Facebook at Caredera, follow us on Instagram at Caredera app, and connect with us on LinkedIn at Caredera to stay up to date and join the conversation. We'd love to hear from you, so share your thoughts, leave a comment, or reach out and tell us about your own experiences. Thanks again for listening, and stay tuned for more conversations coming soon.